Hey there everybody, Joe here. Thanks for tuning in. Celtic Saint left a good comment. Can you point me in the direction of a video that you've done showing how to paint realistic looking shadows? Let me take a minute to show you just how I do that in this video. And thank you, Maria Kellner, for mentioning my How to Paint Rocks video where I do talk about that, but I want to do an even better job here. I have a shadow here and a shadow here. So these are two different kinds of shadows. This shadow is facing straight up at the sky. This shadow is facing straight out toward objects and things not as bright as the sky. I always consider first the lightness or the darkness of the shadow. That's really important because you don't want to have a shadow like this darker than a shadow like this, because this one's facing the brighter light source. Then I consider the color that the shadow should be based on what it's facing, because everything in a painting is a light and it's all shining everywhere. So I want to understand what all of those different light colors are going to do when they combine on the surface of my shadow. This one, I have more of the reds and orange still in the rock because it's not facing up toward that blue sky as much. This one, since it's facing more up toward the blue sky, it's a lot more violet, and I know that blue plus orange creates a grayish violet when you combine light. Now this is not just facing sideways, this is facing downward, so that's going to be my darkest shadows in a picture, is like a deep crevice where light is not directly shining on from any direction on that surface. You know, when you have two surfaces coming close together, those are the darkest shadows. But when it's facing downward, also it's facing away from everything that would be shining on it, except for the little bit that will reflect off this rock and bounce up and hit that. So then what shadow should be darker and which should be lighter? I have one area that I want to be the shadow of the surface of this rock facing up toward the sky. So I should make that one a little more violet. The blue and the orange, again, making a slightly more violet. The one facing down from this rock, the underside of this rock, I want to be the darkest, but should that one also be the violet color? I mean, yeah, the skylight would reflect and hit it a little bit, but not nearly as much as this facing directly toward the sky. So this one I'll make a lot less violet and darker. To make the shadow, I think probably do red and black and a little bit of yellow. And I'll probably have to add a little bit of white. That's what I added in the original color here. Now the way I made that more violet colored shadow was not by using blue and red, but just by using black and red. I didn't make it as violet. I didn't use as much of the black and white, that gray that makes that purple color. I didn't use as much as that other shadow on the other side of the mural, because this is getting blocked by this big overhang and a lot of orange light is reflecting down and hitting it. So when I'm doing a big mural like this, I'm bound to have inconsistencies, and that's okay. You know, what I care about is it believable when someone is looking at it. So this shadow is quite a bit darker than these other shadows. I will strive to make those consistent, but there's a lot of wiggle room in the exact color of the shadows. You know, I don't want you to think that it's an exact calculation and it's either right or wrong. No, I mean, just considering those different light sources and some result that's close will have really good results, and you might be surprised what your imagination can do for you if you know what elements you're considering and what you need to imagine happening. So try that out. Think about what lights are combining to create the shadow and the light, and then think about what the resulting mix would be. So that is just the challenge, isn't it? What is the resulting mix when you mix different colors of light? You have to become familiar with what light does when it mixes. That has been one of the most transforming things that I have learned. What light does when it mixes. It blew my mind the first time I figured out that red and green mix to make yellow on, say, your monitor screen right now. So light is very different than paint. So when you learn that, then it really helps you to understand what's going to happen when light mixes in the natural world. But I've created this color triangle, similar to a color wheel, but with a color triangle, you can draw a straight line between any two colors and see what the resulting mix would be between those two colors. So in this triangle that I've made, it's what you call additive, where the result is the sum value of the two. So if each starting color, like the green and the red, for instance, are a value of 1, then the result in between, the yellow that they make, is a value of 2. And I'm talking about the brightness. So you mix this light and this light, the result is brighter because you're combining 2. But that can be confusing when you're trying to use that as a tool for understanding what things do when they mix together, because a lot of the time, like on an object like this, one light is diminishing as another light is increasing. So what you have is more of an average. So this color here is a combination of a bluer light on this brown, which would be like a dark yellow. Right here it's brighter, but as it gets darker, the blue gets brighter. So it's not the sum value of the two together now. It's this one being less and this one being more. So I've made another color triangle that just is those same values, but dimmed down to what would be an average, so that you can understand that when you see a brown, you're seeing a dark yellow. When you see a gray, it's the combination of all three primary colors, red, green, and blue, that would make a white, but at a darker value. And so you can start to see that colors in nature can be translated to a combination of these different primaries. So then that brings you to the question, well, why the primaries? What are the primaries? Primaries are just colors that you can't make, and it's different with each medium. So in the medium of light, we can't make the red with a combination of other lights. And we can't make the green, and we can't make the, red, green, and blue. We can't make those with a combination of other lights, and that's based on the way our eyes perceive light. My point in saying that is that we can understand everything as a result of a different combination of those three primaries. And so that's what this color triangle can help you do, is to understand every color you see as a different combination of those three. So for instance, I can look at this dark green up there and understand it's not just green, it's green with maybe a little bit of red and darkened down. And so when you're able to look at any color in nature, like the brown of this, and say, well, that's like a yellow with maybe a little bit of blue, making it slightly more gray, and then darkened, then it really helps you to understand what its opposite color is, or what is going to happen when it mixes with another color on that color triangle. Now on this other mural that I did down in Gilbert, Arizona for Terry Carver and her granddaughters, that was a super fun job to do. It was filled with bright colors, and so it was different than this, where they're all these earth tones and you just have a lot of grays and browns. With bright reds and yellows and blues, it really gives you the chance to put that exact process into practice of thinking about what the different colors are going to do when you combine them, and how to make your shadows and light appropriately. I can promise you that I'm using the exact same reasoning process for all my light and shadow on those big bright flowers as I am with all of these intermediate earthy tones. So as you look at this, compare what you see me painting to that color triangle and what the different combining lights produce, and hopefully you can use it in your paintings as well. On last week's video, Marcus Moylan says, I adore these question and answer videos like crazy. I wish I was the one who asked. Thank you, Marcus. I Appreciate that enthusiasm. Miranda Menejias has a real good question here. And to make it short, she's asking about ways to make blending easier. And so the problem with blending fast drying paints is you get a lot of brush texture and lines and all kinds of it's very hard to get smooth blends in short. And so I made a video on this exact thing, and so you can watch that video that is just called Blending Fast Drying Paint. And you'll see me struggling with the same thing on that same job at Terry Carver's house. But I can tell you this, I don't like to use a lot of additives anymore. I did do that a lot in the past, and I still think it's a good practice, but I just feel like it's better use of my time to try to invent techniques for using the fast dry time of paint rather than fighting it. And so I layer paint like crazy to get smooth blends, and I'll just take two colors in a complex gradient. If I really want to get smooth blends, I'll just find two colors that need to blend into each other and just mix those two colors in advance in little containers. Put them both on the wall, heavy enough that it gives me some time to blend them together, smooth out the edges because it's small amounts that I can spread thin enough. I just feather it out and keep water in my brush. And then when I'm done with that blend, I can overlap other blends on top of it, or even overlap the same blend right next to it to continue a longer, bigger pattern. So by isolating two colors at a time and keeping my areas small and using transparent layers that can be feathered out into gradients, I can get smoother transitions. And especially when doing skin tone, like last week I talked about that red-orange line between the shadow and the light. I might just paint a hard line and then just feather it with the edge of a wet brush, or maybe just dab it with my finger. In the end, it's just plain hard. I mean, working with fast drying paint is hard, and sometimes acrylics just have a different look because you don't have as smooth of blends with them. You can do it. I just don't have an answer to make it easy, but that is my technique. Henk Jan Bakker says, again, to make this comment short, I should do a video so I can show you what I've learned. Would I dare to do that? I definitely think you should. I would watch it. Ian Millard has a good question here. As a young artist, I was wondering your technique on drawing hands. With drawing everything, I look for the biggest shapes that I can remember first. So, with a hand, I might just start with the square shape that is this palm that the fingers attached to, and I would try to memorize that shape by drawing it over and over. So I would memorize how it has this curve here and this, for the most part, straight edge, and then this slight curve here, and that's not too hard to remember. I would really get that ingrained in my memory. And if that was too much to remember right away, I would just remember a square and then work on the smaller details within that square after I learn the bigger shapes first. And so you learn the bigger shapes, learn to draw them at different angles, and then start drawing the smaller shapes within those bigger shapes. The key to learning to draw things from your imagination is building up a library of shapes. But to do that, there's a way that I think works best, and that is by organizing your method of learning. Big things first, shapes within shapes within shapes. Big things first, and then work down to the small details. If I spend hours learning about the wrinkles in the palm of a hand, but I don't know the shape of the palm that they go on, then it's going to be really hard for me to remember what I'm trying to learn, because it doesn't have, for an illustration, let's say it doesn't have a file folder to go into. You build the bigger things in your memory first. They function as a folder to put smaller details inside of that are more accessible for your memory as you're drawing a picture. I love this comment from Zulfikar Ali Khan. Hi Joe, this is Zulfi from India. I am an oil color artist, but after I started watching your videos, I became a muralist and I made some money also. Smiley face. Thank you for being my teacher. That is super encouraging, Zulfi, and congratulations. That's super exciting news. Thanks for sharing that. I love hearing that. I hope you continue to do great work with your oil painting too. Failure to come up with a better name says, I'm currently painting a wall at my high school. These videos are really useful because I can know why things work and not just it looks good. That drove me crazy when I was learning. I'm a guy who needs to know why, because I feel like if I know why, then I can reproduce it. So thank you for that comment. Jamal Tahiri says, I would like to download your videos, but I want to do something in return. I am from Holland. Maybe I can send you something. Well, Jamal, if you send me something, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you all my videos for free and I'll put whatever you send me on a video, if it's appropriate. Carlos Schmidt says, something I learned from you, Joe, is that it's okay to make mistakes. Even on this video, we can see you trying something and ending up changing it later. I have more courage after seeing you making these changes and knowing it is a natural thing on the learning curve. Thank you for mentioning that, Carlos. Part of my philosophy, I guess, in life and as a learner is that we need to see each other make mistakes for that exact reason, and we all benefit when we get rid of the fear of others seeing our mistakes. My learning accelerated so much when I became willing to have all of my shortcomings put up on a stage for everyone to see. This is where I'm at. It's not what I am. It doesn't define me. It's just where I am. And it's a constantly changing thing. And why should I be ashamed of not knowing how to do everything? So trial and error is such a valuable part of learning. You know, I really think that if you want your learning to accelerate, you have to get rid of that fear of making mistakes and being obsessed with that final outcome. Anita Drobina. Hi, from Croatia. I can say everything that is already said. You are a great guy, painter, and inspiration. I always feel kind of awkward reading compliments to myself. I gotta ease up on that. But thank you, Anita, for that shout out from Croatia. You know, this reminds me, I used to work with a buddy from Serbia. His name was Miroslav, and I had a real good time with that guy. He taught me to count in Serbian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Izrael, moj prijatelj, from Croatia. I'm sorry if I just sent you a vulgar insult. You'll have to let me know. My friend Miroslav used to say all the time, in my country, if a man talks to his boss like that, he'd take a wrench and hit him. He always had these real extreme stories. Roundbrush Steve says, if you had a huge wall, a blank canvas to paint as you wish, what would you paint? I really love painting, creatures. When I was growing up, I would always do pencil drawings of dragons, monsters. I would learn how to draw different animals and reassemble the body parts in different combinations. I think I still would love to do that. I love painting places that I would like to go. It's always a fantasy of, if I was there, I'd like to be there. So I'd paint some kind of a paradise with cool looking creatures in it, I guess. Naughty Whatever says, hey Joe, I know now you read comments. Now I have the urge to tell you why I'm watching. And I don't mean you should read mine out loud. Too late. But your underwater painting with the light hitting the surface, it was exactly what I needed to understand for my project. It was incredibly helpful how you explained the color amounts, and it was the reason I subscribed a few weeks ago. Wow, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if it's natty or naughty, but thank you. That's very encouraging to me. I appreciate that. Okay, and the last comment that I'm gonna hit is Darlene Connard says, how long did it take you to learn to paint skin tone? The reason I want to answer this question is because the time that it takes to research how something works is a long process. But if you know where to go to just find that information, that's why I make these videos, so that you don't have to spend the years researching these things that I've spent. Now, I love doing that. That's the thrill of life for me. But you don't have to do the work twice. I mean, if somebody discovers, the solution to a quadratic equation, you don't have to redo that research. You just use that formula. So it took me a long time to learn about skin tone. When I first started doing it, I noticed things looked real deathly and not alive. And then I noticed that when I started coloring my shadows, that made a difference. But then it wasn't quite right still. And then I learned that you can change the hues from a highlight, from the brightest part of a highlight to the dimmer part of a highlight. You can change from a yellower to a redder. And then the last thing I discovered was, hey, you can really see an intermediate color right there between the shadow and the... I learned all these things over several years, but once you know, it takes minutes to understand it and apply it. Or maybe it takes more than minutes to apply it. But my point is that I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking you've got to put in the time like I put in order to learn these things. Once you know, and you never have to go back to not knowing. So I only mean that as an encouragement. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for watching my video. I really am enjoying taking these comments and questions, and I hope to go over a lot more next week. So we'll see you then.